What if I told you that some of the greatest college football dynasties didn't die because they got beaten, but because they self-destructed? We're talking about Pete Carroll's USC, Urban Meyer's Florida, Les Miles's LSU, Chip Kelly's Oregon, Jimbo Fisher's Florida State. They had everything: talent, swagger, and dominance, until it all vanished. How do you go from unstoppable to irrelevant almost overnight? That's what we're breaking down today. College football dynasties are fragile as hell. They burn bright, but most don't last long enough to see a second chapter. Today we're talking about programs that died too soon. Not rebuilds, not natural cycles. We're talking about straight-up implosions. These weren't teams that slowly faded away. These were powerhouses that looked like they'd dominate for decades, and then collapsed within 3 to 5 years of their peak. But here's the thing. Most of these collapses weren't accidents. They were predictable. Let's start with the Golden Boys of Hollywood, the Trojans that flew too close to the sun. USC, 2002 to 2008, the Hollywood Empire. USC are legends because they made college football look like a movie. They dominated everything for 7 straight years. 2 national titles, 7 straight BCS Bowls, a parade of NFL stars that reads like a Hall of Fame roster. Matt Leinart throwing dimes to Dwayne Jarrett and Steve Smith. Reggie Bush breaking ankles and Heisman Trophy records. A defense stacked with Clay Matthews, Brian Cushing, Ray Maualuga, and Troy Polamalu. The 2004 team went undefeated and looked unstoppable. The 2005 team was even better until Vince Young happened in the Rose Bowl. But even that loss felt like a fluke. USC was still the gold standard of college football. They recruited like king. 5-star players lined up to play in Los Angeles. The facilities were NFL level. The swagger was unmatched. They looked like they'd dominate the Pac-10 forever. But here's the kicker. Pete Carroll saw the collapse coming and bailed before the fire spread. The 2005 Rose Bowl against Texas wasn't just peak USC power. That was the beginning of the end. Carroll knew the NCAA hammer was coming for the Reggie Bush scandal. The house in San Diego, the car, the cash payments from agents. The investigation was heating up, and Carroll knew what was coming. So what did he do? He jumped ship to Seattle and the NFL before the sanctions hit. Smart move for him. Disaster for USC. What happened next was a decade of misery. Lane Kiffin's mediocrity and Twitter meltdowns. Sark's drinking problem and 3 a.m. text messages to co-eds. Clay Helton's complete incompetence and inability to develop quarterbacks. A sanctions hangover that cost them scholarships, bowl games, and recruiting momentum for years. USC didn't fall because of the NCAA. They fell because their coach abandoned them when things got tough. Florida, 2006 to 2010, Urban Meyer's toxic greatness. Florida are burnouts because they ran their program like it was life or death. National titles in 2006 and 2008. Tim Tebow crying, praying, and winning Heismans while throwing jump passes and running through defenders like they were traffic cones. A defense loaded with future NFL stars like the Pouncey twins, Joe Hayden, Ahmad Black, and Brandon Spikes. They dominated the SEC when the SEC was becoming the most competitive conference in America. They beat LSU in Death Valley. They beat Alabama when Saban was building his empire. They broke everyone's will to compete with their intensity and preparation. But that intensity came at a cost. Urban Meyer demanded perfection from everyone: players, coaches, trainers, equipment managers. The culture was built on obsession, and obsession burns people out. Urban Meyer built a winning culture that couldn't sustain itself. Remember the 2009 SEC championship? Tebow crying after losing to Alabama? That wasn't just disappointment. That was the emotional exhaustion of a dynasty running on pure adrenaline and obsession for 4 straight years. Meyer's heart problems weren't just stress from losing games. The locker room culture was spiraling out of control. Players were getting arrested left and right, over 30 arrests during Meyer's tenure. Aaron Hernandez was already showing signs of the violence that would define his tragic NFL career. The program was toxic from top to bottom. Meyer knew it. Players knew it. That's why he retired after 2009, then unretired when he couldn't stay away, then retired again after 2010 when he realized the problems weren't fixable. Everyone blames Tebow's graduation for the fall, but Florida's dynasty was already crumbling from the inside. The foundation was rotten. The Gators didn't lose their edge. They lost their sanity. Oregon, 2010 to 2014, the innovation that lost its edge. Oregon are pioneers because they revolutionized everything about college football. Chip Kelly's tempo offense that snapped the ball every 12 seconds and left defenses gasping for air. Those insane uniforms that changed every game and made Nike millions. The modern spread attack with zone reads and bubble screens that every team in America eventually copied. 4 straight BCS appearances from 2010 to 2013. A Heisman Trophy winner in Marcus Mariota who could throw dimes and run like a gazelle. They were ahead of their time in every single way, from their no-huddle offense to their sports science approach to their social media presence. The 2009 team battled back from the opening night blount punch to make the Rose Bowl. The 2010 team made it to the BCS championship but lost to Auburn. The 2011 team beat the Russell Wilson-led Wisconsin Badgers in the Rose Bowl. The 2012 team went to the Fiesta Bowl and ran over Kansas State. They were consistently elite. But they were also cursed by being ahead of their time. Oregon didn't fall because the offense got figured out. It fell because the system worked too well. Here's the thing about innovation. It masks fundamental problems. Oregon's fast-paced offense made average players look like All-Americans. It covered up recruiting gaps in the trenches where championships are won. It hid the fact that they couldn't match the depth and physicality of Alabama, Ohio State, or other traditional powers. The 2014 College Football Playoff Championship against Ohio State exposed everything. Mariota was absolutely brilliant, throwing for 333 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Oregon got physically dominated where it mattered most, in the trenches. Ohio State's defensive line ate their lunch, and their running game controlled the clock. When Chip Kelly jumped to the NFL after 2012, Mark Helfrich inherited a Ferrari that required a Formula One driver to operate. Helfrich was a good coordinator and a great guy, but he wasn't a genius. The system required constant innovation and adjustment, and Helfrich couldn't provide that. Oregon's revolution died because revolutions need revolutionaries, not caretakers. Florida State, 2012 to 2016. The meteor that burned bright. Florida State are meteors because they peaked perfectly and crashed spectacularly. Jameis Winston's Heisman season in 2013 was pure magic. The national championship over Auburn with that last-second touchdown pass to Kelvin Benjamin. An undefeated regular season that felt absolutely inevitable from Game 1. They looked like the new Alabama. They recruited 5-star players like they were going out of style. Dalvin Cook, Jalen Ramsey, Derwin James, Cam Akers. They played with championship swagger and backed it up with elite talent at every position. The 2013 team was loaded. Winston throwing to Rashad Green and Kelvin Benjamin. Dalvin Cook running behind a massive offensive line. A defense with LaMarcus Joyner, Timmy Jernigan, and Christian Jones. They beat everyone by double digits and made it look easy. But success bred arrogance, and arrogance bred complacency. Jimbo Fisher didn't leave Florida State for money. He left because the program was already rotting from within. The 2014 Rose Bowl against Oregon was the turning point. That fumble in the final minutes by Jameis Winston, that wasn't bad luck. That was a program that had stopped believing in its own invincibility. They were undefeated but unconvincing all season, squeaking by inferior opponents. Winston's off-field issues became a constant distraction. The sexual assault allegations, the crab legs incident, the profanity on campus, every week brought new drama. Jimbo's relationships with boosters and administrators fractured over how to handle the controversies. The culture went from championship swagger to entitled arrogance. Players thought they could coast on talent. Coaches thought they could recruit their way out of any problem. By 2016, they were losing to Louisville and North Carolina, teams they should have beaten by 30 points. By 2017, Jimbo was packing his bags for College Station and $75 million guaranteed, leaving behind a program in shambles. Florida State's crash was so dramatic because they thought they were untouchable. Louisiana State, 2019 to 2021, the one-year dynasty. The LSU Tigers are lightning bolts because they achieved absolute perfection and then disappeared. The 2019 season was arguably the greatest single season in college football history. Joe Burrow throwing for 5,671 yards and 60 touchdowns while completing 76% of his passes. Joe Brady's offense breaking every record in the book with RPOs, 4 verticals, and perfectly timed screens. A 15-0 perfect season that wasn't even close. They beat Alabama 46-41 in Tuscaloosa, ending the Crimson Tide's dynasty dreams. They destroyed Georgia 37-10 in the SEC championship. They obliterated Oklahoma 63-28 in the playoff semifinal. They crushed Clemson 42-25 in the national championship game. Every game was a masterpiece. Burrow to Jamar Chase, Burrow to Justin Jefferson, Burrow to Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield. The offense was unstoppable, and the defense was good enough with Derek Stingley Jr. and Grant Delpit. They looked like the start of a new dynasty in Baton Rouge. They looked like they'd dominate the SEC for years. But here's the truth. LSU's 2019 team wasn't the start of a dynasty. It was the end of one. That system was lightning in a bottle that could never be recreated. Joe Brady left for the NFL after one season. Joe Burrow graduated to Cincinnati in NFL stardom. The offensive line coach left. The passing game coordinator left. The wide receivers coach left. The entire infrastructure that made the magic happen vanished in one offseason. Coach O couldn't rebuild it because he didn't build it in the first place. He was just the face of a perfect storm of talent and coaching that aligned for exactly one magical season. Without Brady's play-calling genius and Burrow's execution, the system collapsed. The 2020 opener against Mississippi State said everything you needed to know. They went from unstoppable to stunned at home, losing to Mike Leach's air raid in front of cardboard cutouts during COVID. From unbeaten to 5-5 in 2 years, the steepest fall for a champion ever. Clemson, 2016 to 2020, the dynasty that peaked too cleanly. Clemson are perfectionists because they got too comfortable with being perfect. 2 national titles in 2016 and 2018. 4 college football playoff finals in 5 years. A machine-like run that made them look inevitable every single season. Deshaun Watson's magic in 2016. Trevor Lawrence's dominance from 2018 to 2020. A program that seemed built to last forever. Dabo Swinney built something truly special at Clemson. The facilities rivaled Alabama's. The culture was family first but championship focused. They had the perfect blend of elite talent and developmental coaching. Watson, Lawrence, T. Higgins, Travis Etienne, Isaiah Simmons. They produced NFL stars every year. The 2018 team was particularly dominant, going 15-0 and destroying Alabama 44-16 in the national championship. They looked unstoppable with Lawrence throwing to a loaded receiving core and Etienne running behind a massive offensive line. But success bred complacency, and complacency bred stagnation. Clemson didn't get worse. The rest of college football caught up while Dabo refused to change. Recruiting started to stagnate around 2019. They were still getting good players, but not the elite difference makers they needed to stay ahead of Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State. The transfer portal became a major factor in college football, but Dabo refused to adapt, calling it free agency and sticking to high school recruiting. Staff loyalty became a weakness instead of a strength. Dabo kept coordinators and position coaches who had been passed by, refusing to make changes that could have kept them competitive. The offense became predictable. The defense lost its edge. The 2020 loss to Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl was the moment Clemson's physical edge got exposed. They looked slow against the Buckeyes. They looked outdated. Justin Fields and the Ohio State offense carved them up like they were a mid-tier ACC team. Dabo's resistance to change left Clemson behind while the sport moved forward. College football moves fast. One season you're unbeatable, the next you're a cautionary tale. Every one of these dynasties proves the same truth. It's not the fall that kills you. It's thinking it'll never happen. Dynasties die not when the wins stop, but when the arrogance starts. USC thought they were untouchable until the NCAA came knocking. Florida thought they could run on pure intensity forever. Oregon thought innovation was enough without the horses. Florida State thought talent would carry them through any storm. LSU thought lightning could strike twice in the same place. Clemson thought perfection was permanent. They were all wrong. Here's the thing about college football. Every dynasty ends. The only question is whether it ends naturally or spectacularly. If you want to see which current dynasties are showing cracks, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments which program you think is next to fall. Because trust me, someone's about to learn this lesson the hard way. Every dynasty ends, some just sooner than they should.